never wanted to debate hegemony again after last year. If that is the case, if you thought that, then it's probably because you were not debating hegemony to its fullest potential last year. Because really, hedge good bad equal fabulous. Okay? All right.
I'm with you, Riley.
I'm sorry for my phonetic spelling Montgomery joke, so I did not respond. Alright, freedom, as you probably know, is not free.
I want to take a detour. What would you do if you were asked to give up your dreams for freedom? What would you do if asked to make the ultimate sacrifice? Would you think about all them people who gave up everything they had? Would you think about all them war vets? And would you start to feel bad? Freedom isn't free. It costs folks like you and me. And if we don't all chip in, we'll never play that field. Freedom isn't free. No, there's an empty that can fade. And if you don't throw in your bucko five, who will?
Brings the tyranny right in.
Freedom calls a bucko.
Thank you. I do think this is fun. How many of you have seen Team America? Okay, if you have not, like, seriously, you should watch it. Like, do not prep for your debates tomorrow. Watch Team America because it is hilarious. There's a puppet sex scene, so maybe you need to, like, fast forward through that. But anyway, so Britain's Not Free, Comes to Bucko 5. There are other songs as well. And hey, Tristan Cycle, are you in here? Is he a two-weeker?
Yeah, he was a two-weeker.
Okay.
Just like everyone has AIDS.
Oh, Britain's Not Free. Part of the reason why I showed you that is so that I could tell you to watch Team America because it is hilarious. And it is all puppets, like animation. So don't look at me so skeptically, but it is hilarious. It does, by the way, also mean that every time I see Kim Jong-il, I can only think of the puppet that's in Team America. Also hilarious. Anywho, part of the reason why that movie is an interesting one when it comes to hedge is that it does kind of highlight the role that the United States plays in being the world's police. And so, I want to talk now about some terms in the hedge debate. And by the way, hedge, leadership, primacy, those are all synonyms for one another. So when people say like leadership advantage, it's usually because they don't want you to pull out your hedge bad blocks. Okay? But it's all the same. That's totally, by the way, why we called our advantage leadership advantage, to be clear. So a couple of things. It is hegemon or hegemony. It is not hegemon or hegemony, or the other various things that you will say. What is the difference between hegemon and hegemony? Yeah.
Hegemon is like the person or the group who has.
Yeah, exactly. So a hegemon, if you're jotting things down, a hegemon is somebody with the preponderance of power. The preponderance of power. Preponderance means the most of in that particular situation. So in this situation, I'm the hegemon because I'm the one who controls whether you go to lunch or not.
Yeah.
All right then. Luckily, I'm a benevolent hegemon. Oh, that's not up there, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so a hegemon is that entity that has the preponderance of power, and then that entity, the country, has hegemony. Okay? All right. Second term, anarchy. We talked about anarchy when I talked about the international law stuff. Anarchy is just the absence of world government. The absence of world government. And so the reason why this is important for hegemony is that a lot of international relations scholars make the argument that because there is no world government, there's no one to enforce international agreements. There's no one to enforce international agreements because of this, lack of a world government. As a result, particularly realists have identified that in the absence of world government, what the world has sort of settled into is something called balance of power politics. Balance of power politics. And balance of power politics basically says that you have one or more countries that have the preponderance of power that serve as the world government equivalent. You have a variety of countries, one country or more, that has the preponderance of power that serves the same function as the world government. One more time, or you got it? One more time? Okay. This argument says that the world, there's either one or more countries that have the preponderance of power that serves the same function as a world government. All right, what's multipolarity? Yeah.
Multiple powers.
Yeah, multiple powers. So multiple countries that have the preponderance of power. What historical time period was characterized by multipolarity? No, not at all.
Soviets?
No, not at all. Yeah.
The UN?
Nope.
Exploration of British imperialism. The times was British imperialism as an exploration.
Nope. No. During the old school colonial period, when Portugal, Spain, Great Britain, France, when those countries all were going out and about and exploring and discovering other places. Did you see my air quotes? Okay. There were people there. They knew it was there. They were not like, oh crap, thanks for discovering it. So during that time period, that's when the world was characterized by multipolarity. For those of you that said the Cold War, that actually is an example of bipolarity. Bipolarity, there are two poles, two countries that have the preponderance of power. So the Cold War was characterized by a bipolar distribution of power. Most international relations scholars that ascribe to this school of thought would say that the bipolar balance of power is the most stable balance of power, and if only we could go back to the Cold War, the world would be a much nicer place. This is kind of true. I mean, I know we had that whole duck and cover drills because maybe we were going to have a nuke war and whatnot, but we really weren't ever going to have a nuke war during this bipolar distribution of power. We'll talk about why in a second. So anyway, most international relations scholars that ascribe to the school of thought would say that bipolarity is the most stable. I skipped over unipolarity. You might have guessed by now that unipolarity means one power. One power. There's a famous article written in the early 90s after the collapse of the Cold War, which is called The Unipolar Moment. And in this article, a guy by the name of Francis Fukuyama made the argument that the U.S. was the single world power and was going to stay that way forever. Read through it, people. Say what one time? Okay, unipolar moment, Francis Fukuyama said one country, the United States, was going to maintain the preponderance of power forever. Kind of not true. We'll talk about that in a second. Then the other term in the debate that is important is regional hegemon. Most people would consider the United States to be a global hegemon, in part because of that forward deployment that we talked about earlier. There are countries that are regional hegemons. For example, China has some, pretty decent regional hegemony. They have the preponderance of power in their area in Asia. Brazil is a country that has regional hegemony in South America, Central and South America, and so those would be some examples of regional hegemony. All right, things that contribute to hegemony. Hard power. As I was saying to my lab yesterday, hard power is the ability to persuade people to do stuff by shooting them. That's in contrast to soft power, which is the ability to get people to do what you want without shooting them. So, some examples of hard power, military readiness. So the fact that the United States is forwardly deployed, that we have what's called a blue water navy. A blue water navy means that we can go anywhere we want to go. The British have a blue water navy, although substantially smaller than ours. Russia has a blue water navy, although substantially smaller than ours. China, they until the last, say, 5 years, had what was called a brown water navy. In my mental map of the world, are you with me? This is my mental map of the world. Okay. Here is China. Here is Taiwan. Here are the Koreas. Here's Japan. Are you with me? Okay. Brown water navy doesn't mean that they like pissed in the water. What it means is that they basically, until about 5 or 8 years ago, couldn't get past Taiwan, which is relatively close, or much further out past there. So they basically could only go here. If the U.S. was over here, they couldn't get to us. So the Chinese started to purchase stuff from the Russians. And so they now have a couple of Akula-class submarines that are nuke-powered submarines that allow them to go further, et cetera. So they're developing a blue water navy. So military readiness then is the ability of the United States, for example, to deploy wherever they want to go and are ready to actually engage in some sort of battle as a result. Tech and innovation also contribute to hard power. So the reason why economic competitiveness contributes to hard power is because we can do research and development that gets us super awesome stuff. So lasers, for example, right? Those are kind of awesome and allow us to like shoot people to get them to do what we want. The GPS stuff that Josh was talking about yesterday, that's another example of tech and innovation that has allowed for the U.S. military to be able to go anywhere and know where they are. All right, soft power, like I said, is the ability to persuade. Economic competitiveness can also contribute to soft power. And the reason why it can contribute to soft power is like people want to buy Coca-Cola. People want to buy Levi's jeans. And so when the United States has economic power globally, that contributes to our soft power. We're able to say to other countries, hey, you know, you ought to like be nice to us because your people love us. Leadership, there's, I think, a place for development, like on these warming advantages, for example, especially for space-based solar power. You can also make an argument that environmental leadership makes us look like we want to help everybody. Particularly, by the way, since we probably contributed most of the stuff that has actually led to global warming. If we suddenly were like, we will take responsibility for this, and we will show some leadership, then that probably would improve our soft power. Questions about any of that for anyone who's still listening to me? All right, then. Do y'all get that when I say that and then you look up, that is a signal to me that you are not listening to me? Putting that out there. Okay, then. Smart power. There's a guy by the name of Joseph Nye. He's a professor at Harvard. He's actually the one that coined the phrase soft power. He's just come out with a book that if you're doing a hedge debate, you should read. He talks there about smart power, which he says is a combination of hard power and soft power. And he says that effective leadership globally is going to require smart power.